Hey gang, and welcome to Scream Bloody Movies. I'm your host, Jamie Hiles, and I'm here, of course, as always, with my co-host, Derek Lemaster.
What's up?
And Lydia Judy. Say hi, Lydia.
Hey.
So, we are here today to talk about, we've got a really great show for you tonight, gang. We have a lot to say about tonight's movie, which is the 2019 remake of Pet Sematary. Last episode, we reviewed Mary Lambert's 1989 original, and we all gave it high marks. I think I said it was 8 pumpkins. Derek said 7. Lydia said 10. We were basically all on board for Mary Lambert's Pet Sematary. So we'll see how these grades reflect into the 2019 Pet Sematary once we get to that part. But first, we're going to open the show like we do every week with the horror news. So there's not a lot of big horror news this week. One of the biggest stories that broke today was that Troma is remaking The Toxic Avenger.
It's about time.
And kind of burying the lead here, Elijah Wood is playing the villain.
Say that one more time.
Elijah Wood is playing the villain in the new Toxic Avenger remake. So let's start with you, Lydia. What do you think of this?
I don't have any thoughts on this yet. This is brand new. It hasn't sunk in yet. I don't know. I don't think I've seen the Toxic Avenger, but like I've seen, I know of it and everything, but I don't think I ever watched it, so I don't really have any thoughts on Elijah Wood playing in it.
Derek, your thoughts?
So man, I remember when I was a little kid staying up to watch Gilbert Gottfried's USA Up All Night. That was the first time that I saw the Toxic Avenger. And I was like, what in the hell is this? But so I'm excited to see a new chapter in that movie franchise. But Elijah Wood, I think, is a good actor. I just am curious when his career tanked so hard that he was going to be in the Toxic Avenger.
Hey, Troma these days are A+. They are in the upper echelon of Hollywood.
What was the last movie or one of the last movies that they produced?
Oh, Troma's been making movies I think they pump out 2 movies a year or something.
Oh, dude.
But you guys, as I'm looking up this news, this literally just happened. New news just broke that Peter Dinklage is also starring in the remake to Toxic Avengers.
Nice.
Okay. Now I'm really interested. What? Yeah,
I don't know. It is being written and directed by Macon Blair, and it's due to shoot later this year. It appears. So this is wild stuff, as Johnny Carson would say. Yeah. Wild stuff. I like how we are dating ourselves horribly in this podcast.
Yeah, I definitely am more interested now. Peter Dinklage is a really good actor. So
is Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he really is.
We have
right. So that could be interesting.
That's exciting news. I'm excited to see that. I've been a fan of the Toxic Avenger movies, like you said, Derek, since I was a kid. I remember watching them on TV late at night and not knowing what the hell was going on. So
I do recall that his wife or girlfriend was, blind, I think, which is probably a good thing for in his situation. But this is going to be fun. I'll have to rewatch those.
Yeah, so that's the big news of the day. Also, a little side news is that Lydia and I, over not this last weekend, but the weekend before, watched the new Saw movie. We saw Spiral. And what did you think of it, Lydia?
I really liked it. I really did.
I liked it too. I thought it was fun. It was, gory when it needed to be. It was fun. It was a Saw movie.
Yep.
All right. So we had some technical difficulties. Derek switched mics. Now you'll be able to see his lovely face. Say something, Derek.
Something.
It's totally worth the wait, folks. Totally worth the wait. Also, tomorrow is the big release of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Yay!
Is that going to come out on HBO Max? Is it?
It's both theaters and HBO Max.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to have to resubscribe now.
Yes. I'm excited. I'll probably be watching it tomorrow. I might. That would be one I'd probably take a trip to the theater to see.
Yeah.
I loved the last two, and I know you were scared initially, Lydia, about the original preview. Have you seen any more previews?
Yes, I have.
And do you feel better?
I do feel a little bit better, yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm still a little bit nervous just of the topic because I've heard the story that it's kind of based on. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, it will. I agree. I think it'll be, it's all about how they approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've read on the reviews, it's getting really great reviews. People are saying it's breathing new life into the franchise. And so that's really cool. I'm excited to see it. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is that Edgar Wright has a new horror movie coming out this year. Did you guys see this?
I don't think so.
It's called Last Night in Soho. It's a psychological thriller that the plot synopsis is a young girl passionate in fashion design who is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s where she encounters her idol, a dazzling wannabe singer. But 1960s London is not what it appears, and time seems to fall apart with shady consequences. So she basically lives the life of her idol in the 1960s, and it starts to interfere every time she goes to sleep, and then it starts to interfere into her real life in modern day life.
That's kind of cool.
So there was a movie with Owen Wilson where he went back in time and...
That was a Woody Allen movie. Yeah.
Was it a Woody Allen movie? It sounds like they borrowed a little bit from that. But anyway.
Edgar Wright is a fantastic filmmaker, of course. Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver, World's End, all of the Cornetto trilogy. So I'm really excited to see him delve into the world of actual horror. I think that'll be exciting.
Yeah.
It was kind of a slow news week as far as horror is concerned. So that's kind of all I pulled today. If there's any big ones, I'm sure the viewers and listeners will let me know about ones I missed, and we'll get a reaction on that next week. So now, guys, we waited long enough. We're going to dive into Pet Sematary, the 2019 remake, which I just watched again for only the second time last night. I wanted to be as fresh as possible into it. It is directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer. It is based off of a screenplay by Jeff Bueller. And it stars Jason Clarke, Amy Seimetz, and John Lithgow. So, let's get into this thing. First of all, let's start with you, Derek. This was the first time you've watched the movie, period, correct?
Yep.
So
I had no expectations.
Right, you went into this thing blind. And Lydia, this is your second time watching it, right?
Yes.
And how did you feel about it after your first viewing?
I really hated it. I feel terrible because I really wanted to love it because I loved the first one, So I went into the theater, and I kind of had a sense that I wouldn't like it from the trailer. I was like, I don't know about this, guys. I go in and I sit there, and I'm literally the entire movie, I'm shaking my head like, no, this isn't what they did. I feel like they just did it wrong.
Yeah. So the first time I watched it, after it was over, I thought it was meh. I didn't like love it. I didn't think it was the worst movie ever made. It just was meh to me. I was like, meh, okay. So this time I had a completely different experience watching it, and we'll get into that when we go through our ratings at the end here. But let's just kind of start digging into this thing. So right off the bat, the tone is completely different than Mary Lambert's Pet Sematary, which is fine because it's not technically a remake. It's a readaptation of Stephen King's novel. But this whole time, it's going to be hard for us not to compare it to the 1989 original, just for the simple fact that that was as close of a adaptation as a movie could be. I mean, the damn thing was written by Stephen King. The screenplay was written by Stephen King. So it's like, you can't get a closer adaptation than that. So it's a reinterpretation, a reimagining, and that's fine. And I was 100% open for that. But there were some choices in here that I did not expect. And maybe some I didn't care for, probably. We'll get into it. But right off the bat, this movie opens with a weird, like, flash forward scene.
Yeah.
Like
Didn't need to be there at all.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I found it completely unnecessary. It was I mean, I understand, I guess, the concept as you want to build the intrigue. Oh, how did all this stuff happen? What happened here? But it didn't need to be there.
You definitely don't need, like, a good movie like the original. Just let you enjoy the movie without having that, like, oh, and then this is the very end.
What do you think of that, Derek?
It is not what I would have chosen to do. I feel like you really can't, because we went into great detail about the opening of the original movie and how amazing it was.
Yeah.
So for it being a kind of a reimagining of that, it had big shoes to fill, and it stuck its little toe in there. So I didn't care for it at all.
Yeah, so my problem with it, it's a modern editing technique. It's a, yeah. I mean, and it's not necessarily completely modern. I mean, the opening of Sunset Boulevard, the classic Billy Wilder movie, opens with the end of the movie. You see our main character floating in the pool and him saying, "Hey, so I died. Here's how I died." And you're invested in that mystery. But it also had this thing called great performances in stellar directing and stellar writing to make us want to go on that journey.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, it was an interesting choice, where this one was like not an interesting choice.
I think the biggest problem with that is that the scene was just way too short. Like, it was so vague and so short that if we had cut that out, we wouldn't have missed anything.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It would have been, I think it would have been more effective just to show the creepy woods, mm-hmm. and then the, shots of the cemetery, kind of similar to what the 89 version did. And then into the Creeds driving. So let's dig into the Creeds a little bit. In this movie, we have Jason Clarke playing Lewis. And he plays him as kind of a more, surprisingly enough, if you can imagine it, a more subdued version of Lewis Creed than that was in the 1989 version. Right? Now, I think Jason Clarke, his performance he's good in it. He does his job well. But the writing of the character makes him less interesting than the Lewis Creed that we are introduced to in the novel.
And to touch on that, like, not that I read a lot, but I have started listening to the audiobook, and I'm like halfway through. And the character development in that, man, you really feel for the characters. Like, I'm getting right to the point where the story twists, and
like have such an attachment to those characters. And I'm sure a lot of that falls back on the actors and how they bring those characters to the screen. But you know, I'm like, no, don't do this. And with him, I'm like, hey, you know what? Go ahead.
Yes.
Get this over with.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the crux of the whole thing is that we're dependent on these actors. And Jason Clarke plays Lewis, like I said, and he does a fine job. John Lithgow is Judd. Amy Seimetz is Rachel, and Jadette Lawrence, who is great as Ellie, by the way. I think she is great in, like, she plays her part well.
I agree.
But there are some problems that we're going to get into with this whole thing. We're gonna start unraveling all of this. So first off, we talked about Lewis a little bit. I feel like the biggest problem with this movie, as far as what my biggest critique is that the first half of this movie, where the character development should be, moves by so fast.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take any time to breathe. There's no time to develop these characters. So by the time that the proverbial shit hits the fan, you kind of don't care. Whereas in the book or in Mary Lambert's original 1989 version, by the time that the shit hits the fan, by the time that Gage gets hit by that semi, we have grown to care for Lewis. We've grown to love Judd unconditionally. At least I have. We've grown to love Rachel. We've grown to love Ellie. We care about these characters. We don't want to see bad things happen to them. So when it does, it hurts. And, you know, we're like, we feel for these characters. In this one, those scenes kind of go by so quick, which we'll touch on each of the other characters as we get to their big moments. But the first big scene of the movie is Ellie meeting Judd. So what did you guys think of, first of all, the introduction of Judd, the interaction with Judd, in Lithgow as Judd? Lydia, you start.
Yeah, I think I didn't hate the scene. I was kind of trying to look at it as its own movie and not compare so much. Like, I was trying to kind of look both ways, you know? And it's just so different than the first one. It's like kind of creepy that she just starts talking to the stranger in the woods. That kind of bothers me a little bit, but yeah, I don't know how I feel about John Lithgow as Judd. I want to give him a chance, you know. It's big shoes to fill.
No, I agree. Derek, your take on this?
Well, I mean, in the book, Lewis looks to him as like a second father, right? And so I think at the beginning of this movie's so forgettable. At the beginning of this movie, it's kind of like they took it. He comes off as kind of a creepy person in the beginning, if I'm getting that correct. And so, I mean, from the very beginning, they are laying a foundation for his character that just deviates so much from like what you loved about him in the 1989 version. And yeah, I just, that approach in general just did not click with me whatsoever.
Your thoughts on Lithgow as Judd?
That was the worst casting decision that they could have made in this movie. I love John Lithgow. He has done some amazing things. Harry and the Hendersons.
I love that.
Love that.
It's a great one.
So much.
It's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, he's been on Third Rock. He's, you know, done things with the recent Planet of the Apes movie. Like, he's a great actor. This was not his character, unfortunately. Maybe he could have made it his character. Maybe it was a choice by the director to push him in a certain direction. But he was, in my opinion, the worst cast person for this movie, or Judd specifically, in my opinion.
So yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. I agree with you, Lydia, as far as when he's introduced. Again, when I watched it the first time, I just was watching a movie. When I watched it this time, I was watching it critically and trying to just watch it as its own movie. And by the time we get to that scene, which is very, very early in the movie, I mean, it is first 10, 15 minutes of the movie. We're already at that point. And Lithgow comes on, and I immediately love him. I love John Lithgow. I think he's great. I think he's so funny, and he's so natural, and he's just has a fatherly feeling to him. And then he starts talking, and he just kind of like, well, Barker. And I was like, what the hell is this? That's not Judd Crandall, you know? And yes, it's creepy that she talks to him. The problem with, to me, Lithgow's performance is that it's just a flat performance. It's kind of one note. He tries to, come across a certain way, but what makes the novel Judd so important, like you said, Derek, is his relationship with Lewis and his relationship with the family. In this version, it seemed like they wanted his relationship to be with Ellie. That's who his anchor is, which would be fine, except the fact that we don't really get any of that. We get the first scene with them, then a second scene with them. Then we just get very few scenes of them interacting. And then to your point about Judd and Lewis's relationship, Derek, in this movie, it's like Lewis just doesn't even like it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like he's like, this guy's an asshole, this old asshole here. He's like annoyed by him. He's like, oh, what are you doing, Judd? Scaring the kids? And there's just, so I have a hard time buying that Judd would tell him the secret. I mean, yeah, I guess he cares for Ellie, but in the 1989 movie and in the book, by the time that church gets hit, he cares deeply for the Creeds. He cares for this family.
Yep.
So him to make that decision to let's tell Lewis about the pet cemetery so we can spare Ellie the pain makes sense. In this, it kind of comes off just like he's like, she really loved that cat? Come on, let's climb up here.
Yeah. Which, by the way, a scene that should not have been like a comical scene. But when I watched it, it came across as that, like it was like a comic break. I'm sure we'll get to it when he said, "It's a loon." It was just like, that is made me laugh.
Lithgow's
Probably shouldn't have.
Lithgow's line delivery of "It's a loon" is pretty hilarious. It's not a great line delivery, actually, when I watched it, because you had mentioned that to me, Derek, and I was watching it, and it happened, and I started laughing out loud. I was like, God damn it. So yeah, that's Judd, and we'll get more into the meat of it when we move forward. But so we get introduced to these characters really quick, and then we get introduced to Pascal about the same time frame that we do in the 1989 movie, except I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me, but I think Pascal is basically pointless in this film.
110%.
Yep. They were literally talking about death, like, to Ellie before Pascal, which I'm pretty sure happens after Pascal in the original.
Yeah, they were talking about death fairly early in this movie, and it kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I guess she visited the cemetery, so to speak, but it's not near as, I mean, first of all, they age Ellie up. Ellie's been aged up from around 6, which is what she is in the novel, to about 10. So she's kind of like 9-10 years old here. So she has like this, she's more capable of these thoughts and these monologues, which is kind of what they were going for. But it kind of takes away a lot of what happens towards the end of the movie, which we will definitely get into the end of this goddamn movie when we get there. I have a lot to say about that, about the whole third act. I have a lot to say about the third act of this movie. But Pascal was introduced around the same time mark, but he is, first, the makeup effects on him, I'm not a fan of. I think he looks more like he was like caught in a chemical burn then hit by a truck. And I mean, there's parts of it, his introductory scene that look pretty good. There's good gore when it's coming out of his head and what have you. But the design, and I'm sorry, I know I'm going to sound like a record, doesn't look as good as it did 30 years ago.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's a detriment to this movie because of just, how well they can do things now. So, yeah, strike number 10.
So we're introduced to Pascal around the same time. The scene is not near as eerie as it could be. It's not
And
near
it was
as
really short.
yeah, that exactly. It was way too short, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't any of them. So you know how in the novel and in, of course, in the Mary Lambert movie that we discussed last week, we have the scene with Pascal is this kind of pretty cool, decently length scene where we get to see Pascal out of nowhere know Lewis's name and talk about the stony is the man's heart and this kind of stuff. In this one, he just is, the lights flash, he's sitting up, and then he's like gone. And
Yeah, it's lame.
In the first movie, he is a character within that movie.
Mm-hmm.
correct.
In this, he's a footnote, essentially.
Yeah,
he doesn't drive the story forward, like
No.
in any way, any meaningful way, at least.
No, he does not. And also, what's crazy to me is how important Pascal is to the novel, and how important he is to Mary Lambert's movie. How he's trying to convey to Lewis, do not do these things, and he does everything within his power to make these things not happen, and even goes as far as trying to get the family involved, doing everything he can. Whereas in the this one, he's in like 3 scenes. And he really does nothing impactful in those scenes. Just some really, I'm sorry to say, not scary jump scares.
Right. And it's like the old Pascal, somehow that guy, the actor, like brought everything that he had to that role. And you really just like him, even though he's a terrifying ghost person that's like, you should be terrified of him, but you just like kind of just want to hang out at the same time. And this guy is like, well, you're just kind of scary, but not even that scary. So
Yeah, I mean,
he's just not as likable.
Exactly. It's more like, yeah, man, I'm sorry you got hit by that truck. That sucks.
Yeah.
A couple of the biggest deviations. And I mean, we're not going through it plot by plot necessarily. We're just kind of talking about the big points, and we'll get to bits of the plot here in a minute. Rachel's story is drastically different in this movie. And how do you feel about Rachel's story in this one? Lydia, you start.
I don't like it.
Well, I'm shocked that you would say such a thing.
I can't. I watched this last week, so I haven't watched it this week. And I honestly can't remember exactly what I hated about it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like Derek said, this movie's not memorable. It doesn't stick with you.
It's not. Derek, do you have any thoughts before I go?
No.
Okay. So let me talk about since I just watched it last night, it's fresh in my mind. Rachel's story, first of all, is very much blended. They make it to where she's responsible for her sister's death.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
With the dumbwaiter.
Which I hate.
Terrible. Unnecessary.
And it's still not her fault, really, I don't think.
No, I 100% agree. Yeah, now that is definitely coming back to me. And I remember when I watched it, I was like, that's the laziest writing I've ever seen in my entire life. The way that they brought that together.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very disjointed. And it's like they had a bunch of these ideas to, like, first of all, to improve on a masterwork, which is something. You know, you have Stephen King's novel here. Just transplant it. I mean, you don't have to transplant it page for page, and you can take some risks, but it's there. The formula's there. Just do that. But first of all, Zelda in this movie is not scary, which is completely a no-no. Zelda is, we talked about it, the most terrifying part of Mary Lambert's movie. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, and where Lydia and I were having an issue remembering this scene, like literally, I would not even have had to have rewatched the '89 version to remember the scene from when I was a kid of how effing scary her character was.
yeah, she was terrifying.
Yeah.
She was terrifying. And so in this one, we get a CG enhanced Zelda, which just looks bad. She's not scary. And then you have Rachel's character, who the actress is doing all she can to bring emotion to it, but the character is flatly written. Like, in the novel, she's a rich character. She has this phobia of death, because it's not necessarily a phobia, but it's a reckoning with death, because she experienced it at such a young age, and she wants to shield her children from death because of this. In this new movie, they shoehorn in her religious argument. They have her say, "Well, remember, when you die, you go to heaven, because remember that's where Grandma is." Blah blah blah. Grandma Creed's in heaven, which is, and then Lewis says, "Well, or maybe there's not." It's nowhere near as crisp and as poignant as King's writing in the novel or the movie, where the conversation between Ellie and Lewis were some of the best parts of the movie. Especially since she's so young.
Right.
In this movie, she's like 10 years old. Well, how do you not know what death is at that point? You have a pretty good understanding of people die, and then this happens. If you're 6, you're less inclined to know that.
Yeah.
Well, especially this day and age too, and this is kind of like more modern, and kids see a lot of stuff on TV and have more questions, where like Ellie in the 80s probably, didn't see as much.
Right.
And the internet, you know what I mean? Like,
right. So let's get on with the plot a little bit here. So the movie progresses the first half similar to how the novel in the '89 version progress. We have Pascal, we have the visit to the pet cemetery, but we don't have the visit with the family, which is unfortunate. And then we have, the Pascal's visitations. We have Church being killed and brought back, which, while we're here, let's talk about Church for a minute. Let's talk about Church. I love the cat that they use. He's a beautiful cat. And Church is great. But why the hell did they turn him into such an asshole?
Well, in my experience, cats are assholes.
So, Church's death brings me to a very good point. Brings up a point to me, which is in Mary Lambert's movie, we're introduced to the semis pretty much immediately. The first shot coming out of the opening scene is a semi. We see the semis regularly throughout a couple different scenes. In this one, we see the semis exactly, I think, once or twice. We see the semi with the first jump scare of the movie when it drives by the road. And then we have Judd randomly call Lewis over awkwardly and say, "Oh, he must have been one of those damn trucks that got him." Now, when Church dies in the original movie, we understand that could happen, because the semis have already been built up, not only through visual cues, but through Judd's dialogue. He talked about it multiple times. That's a mean road there. It's chewed up many pets. Hey,
let me ask you a quick question. Would you say that the semis in the original movie are more of a character than Pascal is in this movie?
Yeah. Absolutely, I would.
I was just curious if you agreed with me on that one.
I would absolutely. Would you agree with that, Lydia?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't think of it like that, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
It's
the
true.
burial scene of the first movie is really cool, right? I mean, we have him walks him up, climbs the thing, the old man, and we talked about it in the last podcast. In this one, it's like very matter of fact, quick. It looks like they're in front of a green screen and shot on a studio backlot. So the original is 100% filmed outdoors in natural light, and it makes this movie look cheap.
It was actually filmed in Maine too.
Yeah. Right.
I will say this specific section of the movie had a very brief scene that I really did like.
Okay,
which
what's
was
that?
when they were walking through the bog, and they're stepping in the water, and they're stepping on the skulls. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Terminator, but it was like
they're in the same
one of
universe.
scenes that I really vividly remember from this because I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a nice shot. There are some nice shots in this movie.
Yeah,
I must
you're
have
right.
looked away.
The rest
I
of
don't
it
remember
was-
that at all. So
Oh, yeah, I know exactly because it was pretty good sound design too. Because you step in and go with it, like the water noises would make. But yeah, that is cool. But in this one, Lithgow just kind of says, "Follow me up here," and then, well, you got to bury your own. I'd help you, but I can't. You got to use the rock. He's like, "What are we doing? Burying a cat, nothing more."
yeah,
And it's not as doesn't
I
come
wrote
off.
in my notes. I wrote Judd is a liar.
Yeah, yes.
Like he's not a liar in the other one. He just kind of like, he's I don't know. His dialogue was a lot different, I guess, but
He's more
I was
vague.
just like, he's a liar.
Yeah, in this one, he's just like straight up. Nothing else is happening. But in the he doesn't directly answer anything in the '89 version. He just kind of like got to bury your own. And Lewis is just kind of like, why the hell did we come clear up here?
Yeah.
Also, we don't get any talk of the Micmacs, which is kind of
Yeah.
upsetting to me. I mean, we don't get any of the history or the lore. We don't even get to see the Winnebago, or not Winnebago, the Wendigo. We don't get to see that RV drive through.
Yeah.
But I mean, Church is alive, and the way that he's introduced is very underwhelming. Do you agree?
Yep.
He just like jumps on Judd's lap. Is that how it is?
No, that's how he's introduced originally.
Yeah.
How
when
he
he comes
is
back, you mean?
Reintroduced.
Yeah.
In the closet.
In the closet, yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a suspenseful scene, but it's not. Unfortunately.
They're like, he's right. She's like, he's right there. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then it's like, oh, no, he is just right there.
Yeah, just sitting there. Meow.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's pretty rough. Terrifying. No, but you just brought up a funny point, which is the awkward dinner scene.
Yeah. That sticks out to me.
It sticks out to me too. It is very weird, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember this scene, Derek?
I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
I
So
don't
tell
know
me
exactly.
about the scene, Lydia.
I don't think I can tell it. Like,
Okay, so
all I remember is just being terribly awkward.
okay, so here's the cut, like the exact cut is Ellie is in Judd's house, and he's like, "Oh, do you always break into people's houses?" And they have like this little banter or what have you.
Finds the gun.
And then she finds the gun and everything, and then he says, she talks to him, has like a dialogue with him about her cat or whatever, and then we just cut to dinner. Judd is sitting at their house with a glass of wine, And Ellie is just doing like a ballerina dance in like the dining room. And they're all like, and then Judd's like, thanks for inviting me over for dinner, folks. It's just this super jarring cut. And then the cut from there is even more jarring because we have this, Church jumps on his lap. He's like, oh, I like him too. And then Gage is like, Church is a good cat. Yeah, Church is a good cat. Then we just kind of cut to the next scene.
Yeah.
Like a very like disjointed kind of thing.
Yeah. I have to say,
all like
what do
character
you guys
building.
think about Gage?
I think Gage is super unmemorable in this.
Yeah.
Like, the kid is very cute and he's fine, but he has nothing to do.
Do you think they
Well,
tried to make him
and,
look exactly like the old Gage almost?
Kind of. I mean, he has darker hair, but
Like, he's got a very similar face too. I
yes,
think.
yes, but he's doing nothing. Like, I mean, he has nothing to do
Yeah.
because Gage's big storyline is taken away from him.
Well, and like where Ellie in the first movie kind of had that connection to Pascal,
Mhm.
and now Gage has that connection to Pascal. But the verbal skills of a toddler compared to the verbal skills of a 6-year-old, like just being able to communicate, like to her mom, like, no, like this is happening. I had a bad dream, and he's
Right.
like, Pascal.
Yeah, it is less. It is less important. It feels like because it's exactly what you said. There's a communication barrier. Basically switching the kids' storylines, but keeping parts of the kids' storylines the same, is what is very detrimental to this movie, in my opinion.
100%, yeah.
Because then it doesn't quite flow like it's supposed to. Like we get, Ellie's talk of death and her understanding of that in, the her regular storyline in this movie. But then we also get Gage's, coming back from the dead and his death scene and his whole arc is basically switched with Ellie's at that point, and he's supposed to take Ellie's arc of being Pascal communicating with him, but that has no impact because of the lack of communication.
Right.
Yeah.
So the arcs feel incomplete because they're just kind of switched.
Yeah.
Do you think if they would have been like how they should be, do you think this movie would have been any better?
No, there's still a lot of problems with this movie. There's still a lot of problems, but I think it would be less. I would feel less offended by it. Probably. So let's get to the big scene. Let's get to Ellie's death. Spoilers. So I was watching this last night, and it was getting up to this scene, and I remember I was like preparing myself. Okay, here we go. Here's where the shoe drops, and this is where last time I watched this, I completely lost interest in this movie. So I'm watching it, and I had been, laughing at other scenes and what have you. Then this scene happens, and Lewis has had a conversation with Judd prior, where Judd basically says, yeah, the dog came after my mom and had to be put down a second time. And a very quick dialogue that's not near as impactful as multiple dialogue scenes building up to the fact that they don't come back the same that we saw in the previous. So Lewis tries to put Church down. He's got a glove on. He's got a needle trying to put this cat down, and he realizes he can't do it. So he drops him off in the middle of nowhere and then drives away. Except seems like he just drops him off like down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have dropped that cat off a cliff. What I would have done.
So yeah, he drops him off. They're having Ellie's 9th birthday party. So she's 9. And she's Judd's just kind of there, The whole family's there. They're doing their bits. And then she's sad that church is gone, which bugs me because in the novel and in Mary Lambert's, we understand how much Ellie loves church. We get to see it. We see their interactions. We see them together. We don't see that at all in this movie. This movie goes the route of tell, don't show, which of course is the old movie adage, you want to tell and not show your audience. So we get a tell, don't show. I miss church. Oh, yeah, you guys were really close. That's how we know they're close, is because they said it.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees him down the road, and she goes to get him. Gage follows, and then that's where we get the bait and switch. Lewis sees Gage in the middle of the road. He runs out, saves him from the semi in a horribly edited scene. We see the semi driver. We see a quick shot of his phone. We see him. Oh, he swerves, and then a cartoon. Sorry, I have to gather myself here. A cartoon tanker pops off the back of the truck and slides across the road and hits Ellie. It's like we're in a fucking Final Destination movie, guys.
Right.
Like, what would be wrong with Lewis pulling Gage and then the truck hits her?
Yeah.
Be just as impactful and less stupid.
Yep.
So what did you guys think of this scene? I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this.
Well, I think it's tragic, and looking at it as its own movie and not, from a book or from another movie, it's, it is definitely sad. The parents, it's pretty heartbreaking to put yourself there, But yeah, as far as comparing it to the original, it's definitely not as effective.
No, and we'll get to the effectiveness of it compared to the original. What did you think about the filmmaking in that scene?
Well, I can tell you and I talked about this on the last one. Like, that scene was so emotional for me because I have a son who's 3, and so like that connection, like I had none of that. Like, it really didn't bother me to watch that, and it's not because it was a girl. It's just because it was not a great. It didn't develop very well. You know what I mean?
That is my problem with the scene. Taking out the novel, taking out Mary Lambert's original, and just judging the scene by itself. The scene just doesn't work because of the goofiness of the tanker.
Mm-hmm.
The goofiness of the tanker blunts the impact of it.
Yeah.
The fact that the tanker flies off and the way it's like cut back and forth between them is like, I don't know, movie of the week sort of stuff. Like, it like has that Lifetime movie of the week feel to that scene, where it just, instead of showing it or feeling the impact of the thud, we get this kind of lifeless action scene, kind of. And the performance of Jason Clarke when he finds her is great. And the performance of of Rachel's actress, Amy Simons, I think I'm saying that right. Her performance is great when she comes around the tanker and she's like can't even speak and can't do anything, and then Lewis runs over and lays on top of her. That is all, very good, like very good acting.
Yeah.
It's the stuff leading up to it. The actual action is just, it's not very good to me.
Yeah, I would maybe sum it up: the simplicity of the original, and the suspense of him running towards the road with all of his might, right? And there's this inevitable event that's going to occur, and it's going to happen. And then you switch to, this version, and it, to your point, like you've got this back and forth. You've got this tanker sliding down the road, and what's going to happen? Who's it going to hit? There's a elegance and simplicity that like built that dread that I think made it so hard for me to watch the original scene, where this one it didn't hit me the same way.
Right.
Well,
you knew it was gonna hit Gage, like you knew that was coming, and it's like you don't want it to happen so bad that you're like fully involved. And in this one, you're like kind of like thinking Gage is gonna get hit on your first watch after knowing what the other movie is. But yeah, it's like you're like, well, Ellie's in the road with the cat, and Gage is gonna get. So what's gonna happen? And it totally takes you out of the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's clever what they did to a degree. I mean, they tried to, like we talked about earlier, switch the roles of the children, and it's kind of like a, like a ooh gotcha moment. Like you thought we were gonna hit Gage like normal, but we switched it, which is like like I see where they're coming from, but it does not serve the story to do that.
Yeah.
You're just doing a bait and switch for people that have watched the original.
Yeah.
But it blunts the impact for people that have not even seen the original, and they watch it and they're kind of taken out of it, especially with the goofiness of the tanker and the way it's put together. Like you said, Derek, the simplicity of the original is just truck, Gage, Lewis, impact. I mean, the economy in the original movie, it's very economically told. The story is, and with the shots, and there's some technical issues with the original. It's not a perfect movie, but it's Lydia would disagree, but it's but it's very economical in its storytelling approach. I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes simpler is better.
Oh boy.
So after Ellie's demise, this movie turns up the diarrhea dial to 11. Because this is where the shit hits the fan in this movie, in my opinion. And not only because of the choices made, but it feels like the last, after Ellie's death, the movie for some reason decides to get on speed and then just bowl through the rest of this movie without any development or any impact. Did you guys feel that way?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll say this. Knowing how the movie ends, the transition that they did between the two characters, the two children, was necessary, and even the like bumping her up, because it would have just been completely out of the realm of believable had they kept it the
correct
same way. So just for the sake of how the movie ended, I guess.
Yeah, but the ending is terrible. We'll get to that. The ending is terrible, so I don't know why you would switch around the whole movie just to tack on this crap ass ending. But
it's
anyway,
like they did it just for people who liked the first movie and like didn't care about the people who had never seen the first movie.
Correct. So there are people out there. And we'll get into it. But there are definitely people out there that have never seen Mary Lambert's 1989 original and have never read Stephen King's book that think that this is how Stephen King's book goes.
Yeah.
So there are people that are...
There were kids in the theater when I went that were terrified. They were like screaming, and I was like, "What is happening?"
to crib a line from John Carpenter when he was talking about Halloween 2, the original cut, before he came in and re-edited it. He said it was about as scary as an episode of Quincy, right? And I think Quincy is scarier than this movie. That's like there was no dread and no terror in this movie for me at all. And we'll get to that when we go over the overall thing. But so after Ellie is brought back, so first of all, what's so great about the novel is we know there's this rift between Lewis and the in-laws.
Mm-hmm.
We know that there's this tension. We know there's a reason for Rachel to take Ellie and go to her in-laws because they want her away from Lewis. They blame Lewis. Lewis is racked with guilt because he blames himself. All of these things are happening. And in the movie, all that stuff is conveyed. We feel all those emotions. We know all of that to be true. In this movie, the decision to bring Ellie back is as haphazard as haphazard could be, in my opinion. He has a drink with Judd, and Judd says, "They don't come back the same." And he's like drinking. He's like, "She touched my heart like nobody ever has in a while." And then he just passes out.
Yeah, he drugged him.
He was drugged.
Yeah, he's drugged. But it's like,
which is like totally out of character for
Lewis, correct? Yeah,
Lewis, yeah.
But
it's weird that he does that.
It's very weird. But what's also like awkward about it is the dialogue that we get is just that. Is just kind of, she touched my heart like nobody else, and they don't come back the same. We don't get Timmy Bitterman's story.
Right, yeah.
We don't get a reason not to bring her back. Hey, these are the stakes. Here's what happens if you bring them back. It happened to me, here it is. Also, whenever Judd tells a story, which is only a couple times in this movie, but we never get any flashbacks. It's always tell, don't show.
Yeah.
Always tell, don't show. Which is filmmaking sin number one.
Yeah.
You know, what's more interesting? Me telling you about this great action scene, or you watching an action scene? You know, that's why you go to movies. It's a visual medium. So we get, Lewis drugging Judd, and he does this whole passing out thing, and then we just get this shot of Lewis in the car saying, "Oh, Judd, I was having a few drinks with Judd. He passed out, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "I'm just scared, just want to make sure you're okay." And he's like, "Yeah, babe, I'm great. I'm fine." And then we pan down, he's got a shovel. And then we're just at the cemetery.
One thing I do want to mention, because we had talked about it when we did the review for the original. I could never understand the animosity that the in-laws had. But I get it, because listening to the book obviously is going to have more details in
Correct.
Almost every aspect. But for anybody who is listening to this and they want more context, do try to read the book, because it gives you a greater understanding of where that their relationship kind of took a right turn.
Right.
Anyway.
But in this movie, it's not even mentioned. There's no mention of the in-laws at all.
Yep.
And there's not even a funeral scene, really.
Yeah, no weird
fight in the middle of a funeral scene. So I guess that's good. But what we do get is him, digging up Ellie. And there's just no suspense to any of it. And there's no time passage. We get the feeling that, several days had passed in the original movie between him burying Ellie and him deciding to dig her up and bury her in the pet cemetery. And we get Judd's cautioning not to do it. And we get this kind of tension building and then we get Pascal saying, "Don't do that shit. Don't do that shit." In this, he just buries her, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then she comes back, and she kind of just has like a lazy eye.
Well, she got hit by a truck.
But, that's pretty good. If I got smashed by a tanker, I'd expect to have more than just a lazy eye. But then again,
Right.
Gage got obliterated by a semi and had like a stitch.
Right.
So what are you going to do?
He got smashed. Oh, that's a good point.
Maybe he just clipped the bumper.
Maybe.
Short.
To be fair, Gage should have been they should have had to soak Gage up to bring him home.
Right. Well, he was probably so small he could have went under it.
Maybe he did. Maybe he got
barely
dragged
did.
under the wheels. Maybe.
Yeah. Something.
Maybe.
I don't know. But I do wonder how they did that effect with her eyes.
I think it's CG.
You think so?
Yeah, I think it's CG. I think it's they used it's similar to what It's
I
similar.
wondered if they used tape at all.
They might have.
Kind of like pulled it.
It's kind of similar to the effect that, like the effect that they used on Aaron Eckhart for The Dark Knight, how they had that when they turned him into Two-Face, how they made his eye bigger on the one side.
Right.
Probably something similar to that. Tape would be the most elegant. I would love if that's how they did it. They just
like from a practical, you could use tape and just kind of distort her face and have this one going up more so this one will look down more. Like, I was staring at it the whole time trying to figure it out, because that's what I really like about the scary movies is like the effects that they use in them, like practical makeup and stuff.
Well, yeah, that's what you want to see. We just don't get a lot of it in this movie.
Yeah, we really don't.
So what's when Ellie comes back, I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I laughed out loud a lot. Like, literally was laughing out loud. I'm sitting I'll set the scene for you guys. It's last night, the lights are off, I'm sitting in the living room, Sarah's in bed, it's just me sitting in the living room, and I think I have like a Coke, and I'm just like, There's a scene where she's laying in bed. So first of all, the scene where he starts brushing her hair when she's in the shower or in the bathtub, and it starts coming out, made me laugh because it's just so awkwardly done.
You're like, man, they put nair on that brush.
Yeah. I was like, man, you got to get some vitamin D.
I actually liked that part because that was like something that they did that was actually creative to the new movie. To me, when I was in the theater, I was like, okay, that is actually creepy when he's raking the staples.
When he's raking the staples, that's effective. Yes.
Yeah, that was
when
good.
He's raking the staples, that's good. But before that, when he's just brushing, the hair's coming off, it's her reaction. She's just kind of like sitting kind of stiff in the bathtub, and he's just stiffly brushing her hair in silence. It's just like,
well, and and I don't know that would have made a difference, but your kid just got like taken out by a tanker, and you're still, to a degree, you're still trying to shelter her, where she's like, "What's wrong, Daddy?" And he's like, "Nothing." At that point, you should probably be like, "Well, honey,
you got hit by a tanker."
He figures it out pretty quick.
So I'm trying to work on your hair. But,
so here's the thing.
Like death.
Yeah. So here's the thing with there's another scene where she's laying in bed.
Yeah.
Right after that, and it's the one that you're talking about where she's and you see her face, and it's like her lazy eye, and she's just kind of like looking over and saying, and I laughed out loud. I was like, this is not supposed to be funny, but this is hilarious to me. Like, the choices they're making here are so bonkers, batshit crazy. Like, they're trying to have this poignant, deep dialogue, but it doesn't make sense for the character. And then, especially when you're revealing that basically she's a vessel for the evil, basically, then it makes even less sense to me. So, basically, they have, they have that first night together or whatever. He's got his daughter back. Then the next morning opens with her dancing in the dining room, and he's just like, at first he's like, oh, and then he's just like, hey, knock it off, and then she just starts breaking shit and just stares him down.
Yeah.
And I know it's meant to be like, ooh, she's not the same, it's spooky, but the way it's shot and choreographed, I found it hilarious. I thought it was like a sitcom. It's just like, and you expect to hear the laugh track, ha ha ha, you better stop, ha. I was like, what is going on with this crazy movie? What do you guys think of the dancing breaking scene?
It was kind of heartless.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, my child just came back from the dead, and she started breaking stuff, and you're, telling her to stop, and she keeps going. Like, as I would have ran over to her and gave her a big hug. I mean, like, it's okay. It'll be okay. Instead, he's just like being stern. And so, yeah, I mean, it just came across as disconnected.
Yeah.
Lydia.
I feel like there's a big difference from the original movie too, with Lewis in that way of like him being like caring and like also being like he kind of like, I mean, in the movie he's kind of just like going through like in a fog of like decisions that he just like cannot figure anything out. He's like, okay, I'll do this. Oh no, it happened like this. And then, you know, in this one he purposely drugs Judd and does whatever the heck he wants, and he's like completely like aware of what's, you know, it's that this isn't good, and he's doing it anyways.
Yes.
Yeah, tactically though, I don't know that I would have if I were the character in that movie, I probably would have done the same way, because you know that Judd is probably going to try to either reason with you or stop you. So the fact that he drugs him, like, that kind of makes sense to me. It's just like, get him out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it makes sense from a logical standpoint. However, it makes zero sense from a character standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's totally fair.
Because the character of Louis Creed would never drug Judd.
Well, yeah, but
and
I don't know. So in like the way that their relationship is in this movie, it's more plausible if you only contain it to this movie. But if you look back at the other material, you're like, yeah, to your point, like he would never do that.
Yeah, it's
his friend.
The character of Lewis in this movie is, like I said, the performance I feel is better, but the character is way worse. The character is unlikable. He's bland, and you have a hard time feeling for him. Whereas even with the wooden acting in the 1989 version of Pet Sematary, you care about Lewis. You want him to succeed. You want his family to be happy. You want him to be happy. Yeah. He shows a sweetness and a heart and an empathy. Whereas in this one, the only empathy you really get is with Pascal at the beginning, where he's like, didn't want him to die. Mm-hmm. Then after that, he's just like, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You know? Like
we talked about how when his wife is talking about Zelda, and he's like, oh my God, I'm going to go get you something. Like, and is like really caring. And in this one, it's like, no.
Yeah, in this one,
your dead sister.
Yeah, basically in this one, he's just kind of like, well, you mean the sister that died when you were young? You're just kind of like, man, you're kind of rushing over this stuff. First of all, not letting it have room to breathe. Mm-hmm. And then you're making the character seem like a heartless jerk instead of this empathetic man that he is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think I don't really like the casting in this movie. I just wanted to say that. I don't know. I like the little girl, but that's pretty much it.
That's a big part of it. And it's not that the actors are doing bad jobs. They're doing as well as they can. Mm-hmm. But the material they're given, yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't think, Laurence Olivier could act his way out of some of this stuff. It's just rough stuff. Rough. I mean, you give Fred Gwynne this script, he would probably not be as good. He'd still be awesome, but he would not be as good.
I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put you on the spot. You have to recast John Lithgow's character, or the actor.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you put in as Judd?
As Judd? In this movie, I really don't think it matters.
Better.
With the writing the way it is, I don't really think it matters.
You don't think it would have...
No, because I don't think...
Fair.
I don't think Lithgow is the problem. I think Lithgow is a very great... Is a great actor, a very fine actor. Who would you put him? Who would you replace him?
I don't know, but I was just curious.
Well, now I put you on the spot, you son of a bitch.
Man, who would I put? I would fucking Tom Hanks, man.
Oh, okay.
Okay, maybe he'll be able to elevate the material. That's true. Now listen, guys. Sometimes dead is better.
I wanted a different Lewis. I think that guy looks like a villain. Anyways, like in general, I feel like I would cast him as a villain in a movie.
He's usually
he plays a villain in a lot of movies.
He usually is a villain. Sometimes he's the lead. I mean, he's great in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. He's a great hero in that movie. I really like him in that. He is unfortunately in the terrible Terminator Genesis as John Connor. Ugh. That movie's on par with this movie. Damn it! But
you know who I would have cast in this movie?
As
Edward
Lewis?
Furlong.
Get out of here. Now you're just being dumb. He was already in Pet Sematary 2, which we'll talk about sometime.
That's why I said it.
But yeah, so Ellie's back. Ellie is going through her motions. Judd's murder in this movie is just flat out terrible.
Yeah.
So for multiple reasons. First of all, in this one, she leaves her house. Judd is ready for her. She breaks into his house, somehow climbing up to the second story. They fake us out with the slicing of the Achilles tendon.
No. So they totally played on the people that watched the original.
Yeah.
Yes, which is the problem.
Because if you're someone who had not seen that, you're probably like, why are they doing this? Like,
Yeah. Yes,
like, it
exactly.
made no sense.
Which makes this whole movie a giant money grab.
Exactly. It makes it feel hollow because it's like they're just playing with the expectations of the people that saw the original, and then they're just flipping them on their head.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, they're going to expect them to cut the Achilles tendon, so we're going to linger on it. And then for somebody that's never seen it, they're just going to be like, why are we just watching this guy's
Is
foot?
this a shoe ad?
Yeah, what is going on? And then when she does cut, it's a fine effect when it cuts the Achilles tendon, but his actual murder is much less memorable.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the worst part of this movie, besides the ending, is this scene where Ellie randomly morphs into Judd's wife and has a dialogue with him about, and he's like, "You're not mine, Linda," or whatever the hell her name is. You know, "You're not mine." And it's like this old woman.
It's Norma, I want to say.
Yeah.
Norma.
So it's this really awkward scene, and first of all, she's wearing the mask like she's fucking Michael Myers or something.
I hate the masks so much.
Hate it. So then she raises it up, and she's this old woman, and it's this terrible morphing effect where she's like, "I'll get you, Judd," and then changes back into Ellie, puts the mask down, and then stabs him off screen.
Those damn Winnebagos, dude.
The Winnebagos get him. So,
and that's why
No, the
that
lore
kind
of
of
the,
did explain. That kind of explained Zelda for me in the original.
right.
I was like, oh, I kind of get that now.
Yeah. So they did. So
it's not Ellie. It's just this
yes.
evil thing.
So exactly. So it's like the concept is fine, but the execution was terrible.
Yeah.
It was just
Confusing.
silly. It was cartoony and silly.
Yeah.
And they're wanting it to be dreadful and scary. It just was not.
It's confusing. I mean, this is my favorite horror movie, and I literally never even picked that up in the original, let alone this one, which just made it like more confusing. But now I kind of like can see and like put it together. So
I'm trying not to say Winnebagos. Are the Wendigos, are they shapeshifters, or are they the ones who are cannibals?
I think they're both. I think they could be both. I mean, it's just a legend, so there's
It's
probably
an urban legend. They can be whatever they want to be.
it's probably multiple things.
So
Anyway,
so Judd's killed off screen, and then Rachel comes home with Gage and talks to Lewis, and then Gage says, "Ellie," and Rachel sees Ellie for the first time, and it's more of this. I mean, the girl's doing a great job, but it's the more of this dialogue like this. "Hi, mommy." It's like they were like, "Hey, do you know how the actor that played Lewis talked in Mary Lambert's movie? Talk like that through the whole movie."
Yeah, exactly.
So
I just thought about it, and what Derek just said made me think of Pumpkinhead, where it's like you bury your own, like like he brought this like demon thing there. I don't know. Maybe I'm connecting dots in stupid places, but it kind of gave me like a Pumpkinhead vibe.
We will talk about Pumpkinhead sometimes. I actually have a fondness for Pumpkinhead. We'll get into that one sometime. I think we should do that one. Let's put a pin in Pumpkinhead. Because I think it's gorgeous to look at. But
Me too.
so back to this shit-tastic film. We the whole third act of this movie is like a terrible mini slasher movie. It turns into a bad mini slasher movie. Ellie breaks into the room with, she attacks Rachel. Rachel locks her out. She breaks in, and there's like a whole slasher chase. She stabs her. And then Lewis has left at this point to go check on dead Judd. And then she sneaks up beside her and stabs her again. And then she says something about mommy, and Rachel says, don't call me mommy. You're not my daughter. Ellie's dead.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good line. But then she stabs her again, and then
Twist it.
Yeah, and then starts dragging her to the cemetery. And this is where the movie just gets full-blown stupid. So this creature's plan now is to bury the rest of the family to create an undead family of zombies to walk the earth, essentially.
It's an army. It's the beginning of an army.
What? What? How do you feel about this, Lydia? You talk about the ending for a while. Let me hear what you think about this ending.
Well, okay, so I really want to like it because I've always just wanted my own little zombie family. So I don't know, something about it. I was just like, yeah, okay, like zombie family, let's do that. And this movie was terrible, so we might as well make the ending like completely ridiculous.
Derek, what do you think?
I didn't explain much.
I actually thought that the ending was the best part of the movie. Not
I
because
did too, because the credits rolled.
But yeah, no, with the choices that they made in the film, both with like switching the kids, making the one a little older, I felt like that was really with those choices, that was a good direction for them to have gone. I'm not saying it was the right direction, but it was, I thought it was the best part of the movie.
So here are my thoughts on the ending of this movie. Last week, you remember, we talked about the ending of Mary Lambert's movie and how I thought that the ending was out of place.
Yep.
How I thought that as great as the gore looked when Rachel comes back, it was not in tone with the thoughtful, smart movie we had gotten up to that point. That Stephen King's original ending, where we just see Rachel's hand on Lewis's shoulder, is a much stronger ending.
Yep, I agree with that.
This movie has that same problem. The movie that they're telling up to this point, even with some of the like absolute ridiculous things that are going on, at the core of it, it's still a relatively grounded, dreadful movie, right? And the ending that they talked about this ending, and I've heard interviews with this about the ending, that it's how completely dark it is. Like, it's such a dark ending, right? Because the whole family kind of dies. But is it a dark ending, or is it just a goofy ending? Because my problem with the ending is that it's implausibly goofy to me. Because you have this movie where we have these events occur, and you have this dreadful kind of pall cast over the film. So that's what they were going for. I didn't feel it, but that's what was supposed to be going on. And then you end it with not only her stabbing Rachel and then burying her and bringing her back from the dead, but then Lewis strangling her, then being killed and buried and brought back from the dead. Then the whole undead family walking up to the car with Gage, and ends on a horrible beep beep sound effect. Just comes off to me as flat out goofy. And that to me is what makes this this ending so bad. Not necessarily not the fact of what occurs, but the execution of what occurs. And the fact that it just does not feel like it's tonally in line with the story it's telling. Just like I thought Mary Lambert's movie ending didn't fit in line with the story they were telling. I'm just going to say it. I think it's stupid. I just don't see the in-character motivation for it. I don't feel like there's an in-character motivation. If the creature would have been talking about the whole time, I need to build an army, or we need to take over this world, or these sort of things.
I think the time that they gave between the father and the daughter, like once he brought her back, right? Because she was an alert being at that point, right? So in the original movie, Gage is just like a little killing machine, right? It's not. He doesn't have an alternative, like an alternative
ulterior motive.
Or any other objective, except the only thing he does is he kills people. And she, like in the beginning of like her coming back, like she has some sort of character that she is playing other than just like a cold-blooded killer. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And so like I can kind of get it from that point of, once they start killing it, for me it's not a big leap to say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna, especially if it's more of like a symbiotic relationship that the like entity has with the host, where I've brought you, or you got brought back, and so now I want like more of those. They definitely would have benefited from adding more to the movie to set that plot up, for sure. Even if it was like he's doing some research and sees that this happened a long time ago with an Indian tribe or something like that. And like, they could have definitely set it up because it was kind of out of nowhere.
I agree with your assessment of that, except for the fact that we don't know if she was sentient during that time, or if it was the creature pretending that she was sentient during that time.
Yeah, and I think that even
because
that motive. Because
if we go by your logic that she was sentient, then it doesn't make sense that she just randomly flips out and starts killing people like for no reason.
Yeah, and I'm curious about the book, like how the book would explain that. I kind of want to read the book too, but I just feel like, because when in the original they were talking about Timmy, and he was just like full on zombie when he came out, and even in the Pet Sematary 2, which we haven't talked about yet, but it's just very like clearly zombie character, like, and even Gage was like biting, ate half of Judd's face.
Yeah,
like I feel like they should kind of, and the Wendigo itself is was used as like a metaphor for cannibalism and like trying to get people to not, like Native Americans, not to eat each other when it was like cold and they didn't have any food,
Right.
Like,
well, and
like
she even makes an offhanded
undertone.
comment that she is connected to the woods. Like she's
which I love that. I love that line.
Yeah.
I can hear the woods.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for I wish that the mom would have just left Gage at the in-laws. I mean,
that's another problem I have.
I don't like that cliffhanger.
Logistically, I mean, I get why they did it, because they wanted to end it on like a downer note or what have you. Except that I found all of it ridiculous and not scary, and I didn't care about the characters. That it didn't bother me at all. I'm like, I don't care what happens in this world. I really don't. But there's just a lot of world building that's not in this movie, that's in the novel, and that's even in the Mary Lambert's original. The world just flat. The characters just I don't feel like the characters have motivation. They just move from plot to plot because that's what the character is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like you said with Lewis is just kind of like in the original, he's just so grief-struck, and you can see that he makes these decisions, and then he's like, oh crap, now I've got to figure out how to fix this decision. Now I've got to figure out how to fix this decision. Whereas in this one, he's just kind of, he brings back Ellie because that's what Lewis's character is supposed to do. He, tries to kill her because that's what Lewis's character is supposed to do. Ellie kills Judd because that's what that surrogate of that character is supposed to do. Judd dies because Judd's supposed to die. As opposed to there being clear motivations for such things.
Yeah.
It's very cookie cutter.
Yeah.
How long was this movie?
How long?
Yeah.
Too long.
About 2 hours too long. It is 1 hour and 41 minutes.
How
long the original?
Think
Go ahead, Derek.
they could have benefited greatly from adding some material to this movie.
Well, we were talking about
even if it's. Go ahead.
We were talking about economy earlier, right? The economy of storytelling. This movie's 1 hour and 41 minutes, and we have a lot of unanswered questions, and everything felt rushed and what have you. Mary Lambert's 1989 Pet Sematary is 1 hour and 43 minutes. It's literally 2 minutes longer, but is much more cohesive.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's all about they chose to do some silly stuff with their time, whereas there was just so much more substance with the that little bit of time or extra that they had in the original. It was just a deeper story. It was more fulfilling.
All right, so let's get to our ratings for this movie, and let's compare it to the original. So I'm going to start with you, Lydia. How many pumpkins would you give Pet Sematary 2019, and what are your thoughts on it versus the original?
I think I'm gonna give it a 2 pumpkins out of 10. Just I don't know. I don't even know. Like I said, the Staples scene, I really liked. The Staples and the hairbrushing. It could have been done better, but yeah, there was probably a couple of things, and I actually wrote down the bird, when the cat brings in the rat in the original.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we talked about that, but he drops a rat in the bathtub, and it's the fakest looking rat. And I was like, well, the bird in this one looks way better than that rat did.
That's true. I can't argue that.
So
it's high praise.
So I'm gonna give them 2 pumpkins for those 2 scenes.
Okay, Derek, your rating.
I'm gonna give it a 4. So I think I gave the last one a 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe after I watch this one, that one bumps up to a 7. But
yeah.
I give this one a 4.
I gave the last one a 7 because I think I gave it an 8, and she gave it a 10.
We'll have to check the footage on that one.
Yeah.
But I would give this one a 4. I mean, it really the character choices. And again, we know that these people are good actors. So it probably was 100% the direction that they were given to take their characters. But, there were just aspects of this movie that really were hurt because of the storytelling aspect or the script. It had some cool things going for it, but in all, it was a poor movie.
I give it also 2 out of 10 pumpkins. I never go that low. But so if you would have asked me before I rewatched it this last time, I would have probably given it 4, Derek. I probably would have given it 4 out of 10 pumpkins. But after last night, I was watching it. Maybe it was the mood I was in. Maybe I might need to give it a third watch. I just don't see myself doing that. But After last night, and after I watched it, I liked it less than I did the first time. Because I guess it wasn't like just the shock of things happening. I knew what was going to happen, so I was critiquing it more. And I just found it to be sloppy and not very compelling. I think that there was bad creative choices for sure. And I just was kind of bored through the movie. It felt like it was like 2.5 hours long, and it was an hour and 41 minutes.
I felt the same way.
I kept checking at the time, like, oh, God, what? How much longer does this movie have? And then what's really crazy is that's all during the first half. The second half, when interesting stuff is actually occurring, like I had to pause it at one point to go to the bathroom, and I had 10 minutes left. And I was like, so wait a minute. In these next 10 minutes is where she kills Rachel, who kills Lewis, who buries themselves, and then they come back for Gage in the last 10 minutes? That's a lot of shit in that last 10 minutes. So it's a 2 out of 10 pumpkins for me as well. Last quick notes. My one favorite scene of the movie, the scene that I liked, is the one that you talked about, Derek, with the feet in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I adore John Lithgow just for being John Lithgow and being alive on this planet for us to enjoy. But best scene of let's do like a worst scene from the '89 version compared to the best scene from this one.
Oh.
What do you guys think of that game real fast?
Sure.
Okay, Derek, you go first. What's the worst scene of '89 compared to the best scene of this one? And then which is a better scene?
I would say the worst scene for me in the '89 version is the kitchen scene where they're talking about death and telling Ellie if something happens to church. And it's only because of the delivery that the actor gives. It is so bland and without emotion that it just takes away from like the impact that scene probably should have. He would have conveyed some sort of emotion about it. Best scene in this movie? Man. I'm gonna say
the water scene. You can say that again if you want.
Scene. Man, I can't think of another one that even really comes close. Like it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say the water scene. That's sad.
Okay, so which one is better?
Water.
Which scene would you have if you had to watch a scene on loop? Which one would you rather watch?
The water scene, because it's visually it's got some pleasing aspects to it.
Okay, Lydia, worst scene, best scene.
Okay, so I think the worst scene for me from the first one is when Lewis is sitting. I think he's at. I think he just dug up Gage at the cemetery, and he's like talking about what he's about to do, and it's like really weird dialogue, and it's just like kind of a weird scene. Like, why are you sitting there talking to yourself? Or like, I mean, I don't know if maybe he's talking to Gage, but he's, it's just a weird, awkward scene to me. And I'm trying to think of a best scene in this one.
That's where we're all struggling. It's great.
But
is that the water scene?
Probably the water scene. I can't remember the water scene. I'm gonna have to. I don't know if I even want to go back to look at it though. But I might have to go look at that scene. But I'm trying to think. Even comparing it to like the hair raking scene, I think I would still just rather watch the old one with the terrible dialogue, and I don't know. Yeah, I think I really just like watching older movies, so that's kind of like just a downfall for me sometimes when I'm like, I don't like this because it's new.
Let me think. Worst scene of '89. It's kind of hard for me. I genuinely like most of the scenes of that movie. Worst scene. I would have to say worst scene is when it would have to be just a Lewis dialogue scene, probably. It'd have to be one of the Lewis's dialogue scenes because I don't want to say the same ones that you guys have said, which is the ones that I think are the worst scenes. Let's use another Lewis dialogue scene. How about when he says, "Wow, that's a lot harder." I was trying to think of them, and then you stole mine, and then you stole the other one.
I think the funeral scene.
Okay, yeah, the funeral scene's pretty bad, but it's not that bad. I think. Okay, worst scene of '89 is the Lewis talking to the in-laws on the phone.
Yeah, she's not here.
Yes.
I'll have her give you a call.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
That's the worst scene of the '89 version. That is the worst scene of the '89 version. Granted, right? That's my worst scene. The best scene of this movie was, oh boy. I would say when, I'm not going to say when the credits roll because I was really close to saying it. But I would say the best scene of this movie is probably the scene with Judd. What's it? Judd's dialogue with Ellie. That's my favorite scene. We'll say because I mean, it's not as strong, but it's still Lithgow. He's still being sweet-ish. I mean, he's kind of creepy, but still fine. I would rather watch Lewis's terrible dialogue scene. For sure. Just because, I mean, at least I get a laugh out of that. The Lithgow one, I'm like, you're so good. What are you doing in this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really funny because at one point in my notes, I wrote, Judd is still a really sweet character. And then like a couple lines later, I was like, Judd is a liar.
Yeah. Well, he is. And that's what's interesting. He just doesn't have the layers and color to him that he has in the originals. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, he's a man of contradictions. He makes some bad decisions. His intentions are always good, but it's like, plus, I mean, the presence of Fred Gwynne is just unmeasurable. The camera loves his face.
Here's a thought. So you said that they're going to do another version.
They're doing a new Pet Sematary. We just don't know what it is.
Okay. This would be a really good mini-series.
I agree.
If they did a even more direct adaptation from the book to include some of the things that they missed to fill in the gaps and things like that. I think it would
did House on Haunted Hill. Is that what it's called? Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah, kind of like Haunting of Hill House.
Oh my god, that would be so good.
That would be really good.
Call Netflix.
I hope that that's what they're doing. My fear is that they're going to try to sequelize it.
Dude, they're going to do it. Yeah. And if they do decide to do it, man, again, I hope that they don't even have to bring back the original actress, but like build off of the original that you had.
If you do that,
Survivor,
I will be fine with that. I would be 100% fine with that.
Yeah,
I'm afraid they're going to sequelize this movie.
I'm sure they're going to.
And that terrifies me.
How would they do that?
The undead family living down the street, man.
Yeah.
There's your sitcom.
Maybe Adam's family. I don't know.
Oh. They'll join forces with Tim Burton.
Oh no.
Well, any final thoughts, you guys?
Just looking at my notes, I should have said when we were talking about best scenes from this movie, I should have said when SpongeBob was on the TV. Because that
was much more enjoyable.
I literally, in my notes, I wrote down, I'd rather be watching SpongeBob than this.
Oh my god. You want to know what my thoughts are about this movie?
What's that?
Don't waste your time, and I'm having more fun watching my cat pick food up off the floor because his bowl is empty than I did to watch that movie.
It is also a hard not recommended for me because it's not even so bad it's good. And it's not that it's a incompetently made film. There's still some, there's some really pretty shots in there. I like the aspect ratio, the widescreen aspect ratio. It's well lit. It's just also hollow and lazy, I feel like. Soulless. And that's no fault of the filmmakers necessarily. It's just that it's what they're saddled with. So yeah, hard, no recommend for me.
Did you guys catch the other Stephen King references going on in the background?
I did not. I was probably just,
Looking at your watch.
watching the movie.
I was like only paying attention to the background because it was more interesting than what was going on in the foreground. So I caught two references. They're at the birthday party. They're talking about Cujo in the background.
Right.
Did you catch that?
Yes, I did catch that.
And when they're traveling on the highway, there's a sign that says 20 minutes from Derry.
Oh, I missed that one.
And there's probably more, I would assume. I mean, maybe not, but I feel like 2 is a low number for some, Stephen King references. But yeah, I don't know the rest. I'd be interested if anybody listening would know and comment.
Yeah, definitely.
More that might be in there.
And if you guys have any comments about this particular film or any questions that we missed, you can comment down below and send them our way, and we may or may not address them next week. You guys have anything else before we go? Nope. All right. Well, thanks for listening to Scream Bloody Movies. Be sure to like and subscribe. Visit the website at highlightproductions.com, and stay tuned for more updates. Next week we'll have some updates on the upcoming movie we are about to shoot, so that'll be interesting and exciting. We'll talk a little bit about that, maybe give a little bit of some plot details away. But until then, enjoy watching movies, continue to keep the horror torch alive, and remember, if you're going to scream bloody movies. Thanks.